on the dais and in the audience, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Professor Ramachandran and ISB for giving me this opportunity to share with you my thoughts on something which is very dear to my heart, family governance. I would also acknowledge, especially the family business, members of the family business who have come to attend this workshop, for taking time out on this very important issue. But having done that, let me say something outrageous. And I would say it deliberately, because I want to provoke you. What is the real challenge of life? Knowledge? There is enough knowledge on the planet. Somebody was asking Dieter in the morning that who will guide us on this? There are thousands of consultants. You make a search on Google, you will have answers to many of your questions. So I believe that knowledge is not the prime concern, the constraint. What is the real challenge is execution. Applying knowledge. Applying knowledge, whatever we keep on accumulating knowledge. I can tell you on the basis of my experience of attending many conferences, whether it is family business or any conference. There is a lot of knowledge which is shared there, and we really like it all. We get for a moment we note down, we ask questions, and we think we'll go and act upon it. But how many of us really go back and act on this knowledge? My experience is it is maybe single digit or at the most up to 20% people actually apply knowledge. And urge for more knowledge is mere pretext for procrastination. I don't have the right answer. I don't have the complete answer. I need to check this. So I am going to talk about this issue as to why we don't take action, why people don't take action, and what are the qualities in people who really go out and take action. My presentation would be about 3 words. Action already I have spoken about. What precedes action is enrollment, and what precedes enrollment is transformation. Let me explain these in more detail. Transformation is different from change. Change is always incremental. It is based on past. Last year I was growing 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%. Let me benchmark. So it is incremental. Transformation is about future. This is what I want to do. Like what Mr. Dhawar was saying, when he was talking of mission. Raising aspirations. Mr. Dhawar, what was it? Raising aspirations? Realizing dreams.
Raising hopes and realizing dreams.
Raising hopes and realizing dreams. So, in the targeted population, he wants to, or this foundation wants to raise hopes and make people realize dreams. So it is based on future. It is huge. It is not incremental. Transformation, when we talk, it is about an orbit shift. Change always starts with this assumption that it takes time. Whereas transformation happens in a moment, in a second. You would have heard many people trying to say that I want to give up smoking. And they take years and years and years. I smoke 60 cigarettes, 50, 40, and go up, go down, and there could be a guy who will decide one day, no more smoking. That is what I call transformation. So change is moving in the orbit, transformation is jumping to the next orbit. Further, whenever the transformation happens, it is as if, I come from North, let me express it in Hindi, दिमाग की बत्ती जल जाती है. All of a sudden you feel like, aha, this is what I want to do. And then in that moment you are not worried about the constraints, the reasons which you have been giving for not taking action. And now you are inspired, you are motivated, you are touched, moved and inspired by a new possibility. This can happen. I can make this thing happen. I can do this. I have to do it. And when this transformation happens, then all of a sudden you will find openings for action. Like taking cue from Sangeeta, Sangeeta is saying that in their family this is at a nascent stage. But I guess already the transformation has happened that we need to do this. And they have already started thinking about it, talking about it, and they will set up a time frame. So it is the decision when it gets taken in the mind that this is what I have to do it. That is what, once that happens, then constraints are no longer constrained you, and you find out new possibilities, new avenues for action. It happened with me. I was reading the story of Tata Steel one day in newspaper. That in 1991, J.J. Irani had shared with J.R.D. Tata that if we don't do something drastic in Tata Steel, it will become a museum. And by 2000, Tata Steel was the lowest cost steel producer in the world. When I read this news story, something happened inside me. My father had decided to split our family. We are 6 brothers. And I said, if those 60, 80,000 people can, reinvent themselves, why can't we 6 of us do it? And so that led to developing a plan and achieving emotional reunion of the family. Now, what are the keys to the transformation? I think basically, one is the story part or the person telling, whether it is a newspaper or a person presenting to you. And the second part is the listener, that is you. In any transformation, there is somebody who is sharing and there is somebody with whom this is being shared. I believe it depends less than 50% on the story or the person sharing. Yes, that is important because the quality of possibility, the quality of work which has been done, as Mr. Rathi was sharing, for 40 years this family is together, for 60 years, and it's growing. So at times that clicks in your mind. The quality of storytelling, I think Mr. Jhawar, the way he communicated, it was excellent. So the way the story is told impacts you. The credibility of the person sharing, how he was associated with the transformation does affect you. But more than 50% depends on the person listening. How much is the hunger, drive, passion in him to find solution to his problems or to his concerns. He had thought in his mind that I have 3 children, I will build 3 different businesses and will give it one to each of my children. And during the conference, he heard from certain speakers that in Europe there are many families who are together for more than 200 years. And that is the time he decided that no more 3 businesses, I am into the business of building institutions. I will build a model family, a model business and a model foundation. And in the past 5 years, what that transformation has subsequently, post-transformation, what all he has done. I think in 2004, the total assets under development in the GMR group were about 500 million. Presently, they are close to 5 billion. The GMR Foundation, Varalakshmi Foundation is doing tremendous good work. At the family level, I think there is, last year we had in the same conference, one of the daughters-in-law of the family sharing how the family is working. So there is lot more cohesiveness, and personally I feel, at the individual level also, family members would be a lot happier before this initiative. The other person whom I know is different from Mr. GM Rao because he is not the founder. He is in the 3rd generation. He is youngest among the 4 family members active in business. And he wanted to grow his business substantially. So what happened, he was sharing with one of his friends, he told him that, family governance is a new subject and IMD conducts courses on it, and there are many families out there. He went for the IMD course and there again something happened. And he realized that for my desire of exponential business growth, it is most important that I need to align the family. So in the past 5 years, already the business has gone, top line has gone from 100 million to 640 million, and it was, like he had said in 2004, by 2010, 1 billion, and it is on track. For the society, again a new foundation is being conceptualized, it is at advanced stage, and there is positive impact at the family and individual level. So, what is common with all the transformed leaders? First of all, they are personally touched, moved and inspired by the possibility. something inside them, जो मैंने पहले कहा बत्ती जल जाती है, they feel light, they feel as links have been added, I have to do this. They take initiative responsibility. They don't look upon deliberately I thought of Puneet's example because he was the youngest. But younger, founder, older, nothing makes difference. I have to make it happen. And they have the ability to hear no innumerable times. From family members, you schedule the meeting, people might not come, the meeting might get rescheduled. There would be n number of business exigencies may require and you yourself may reschedule those meetings. Or in the meetings the progress may not happen as you are happening. So n number of constraints would come up. But that doesn't deter them. And at the heart, at the center of it, they are basically willing to create and share. They believe in win-win, they act on the principle of win-win, and they are working for the larger good. Not only just the family, but even the business as a whole and society as a whole. Now, let me go to this was all about transformation. The next important concept is enrollment. Once the leader is transformed, he develops the ability to share with others the possibility that he has invented in such a manner that the other person is touched, moved, and inspired. Basically, the transformation which has happened inside him, he is able to share in such a convincing manner that the other person is also touched, moved, and inspired. Not by this person, but by the possibility. Can we be a model family? Can we build a model institution? Can our business grow 10 times? Can we impact so many lives? So when one is, again, I think a beautiful example was, Sangeeta is saying that there are 60,000 people part of this family. So at Apollo, the way perhaps the founder has seen it all along is, everybody is part of the family. He's not just thinking of the 4 daughters and their families, but he's thinking of 63,000 employees. So when that transformation, when that possibility goes from the founder or from the transformed persons to others, that is when the organizational transformation starts. After this begins the long haul, lot of action, get the best of knowledge on the subject. There are so many consultants. There can be internal resources available, or you have to assign this work to one of the family members or one of your executives in family office in the morning. That is shared. You can have your own people who can support you in this journey. You could meet other successful families. There are so many families here with whom you can meet directly. Maybe you could invite over them to your places. Books are available. The leader will have to get personally involved in scheduling meetings and in follow-up action. Then one thing which is certain is there will always be differences. So a lot of time has to be spent in managing these differences and in development of the family members. Also, the constitution, the 3 speakers who spoke before me have dealt with 3 parts of the family governance. The ownership structure, succession, and post-retirement. Retirement, succession planning from the point of view the new person coming in, and retirement from the outgoing person. But there are many more policies. So all these policies need to be co-created. That is when there would be ownership, and you will have to necessarily create structure for implementation, what Sangeeta was referring to, family council and other structures. So to summarize, not knowledge, but action is the real challenge. And I want to leave all of you with this question to ponder. Have you been already transformed? Or would you make your transformation a reality before you leave the conference? Thank you.
I think first I will start with Mr. Rathi. You said that in your family only males, the decision was taken that only males would be part of this. And I would want Sangeeta also to respond to this. As to how did the females in the family, then and now, everywhere in the world has changed.
That was the first question I was expecting. First of all, I must tell you that ours is a Marwari family. So for many years, the ladies who used to come to our family, they were not highly educated. And our first principle of family, whoever wants to enter should be properly educated. So, and then they used to keep busy in the many family functions and arranging functions, etc. There was no event management at that time. Afterwards, our daughters started, because the motto of the family is the education, so we gave very good education to the family. But being again a Marwari family, the girls started getting married at the age of 22. So they used to go out of the family and there was no connection as such. Now, the third thing which is happening now, that, and one more thing I want to add is that our family was already a big family. I told you at one time there were 13. We didn't want to add our daughter-in-laws and create more problems, enough problems at home. So now our daughters are getting educated, and many are in USA and they are coming here, and they don't want to get married until the age of 25, 26, 27. And second thing is that our daughter-in-laws who are coming, they are also highly educated. One of our daughter-in-laws recently married, she is a gold medalist of IIM Ahmedabad. So I am posing this question to our family, in the family meetings, and our consultant is here, Professor Das. He is with us for the last 5 years. He usually doesn't stay with any family for more than 2 years. He said, now tell me that. But he said, I cannot leave you people. You people like me so much and we like him so much. Anyway. So now I am posing a question in our family meetings. Why not now female members? And that is the discussion going on now. We have just started this discussion.
I think one part more I wanted to cover is about the ownership also. Like now they would be involved in the management role till they get married.
Right.
But what about, would you be discussing also the ownership issue?
Yes, I will tell you about the ownership. So far, the family, our daughters, when they get married, they, of course, if they hold shareholding, then the problem is that the son-in-law, he tries to intervene in the business. So we decided for a long time that daughters, after we created such trust and other things, so that daughter doesn't hold shares afterwards. If she wants to become a shareholder of Sudarshan or our other public company, her husband can buy it. But so far, the outgoing girls did not hold in shares. We decided a small number only. So they cannot become owners in our family.
I think we started off with all the girls in the business because God decided that. There were no sons, so it was easy. But I think the one factor that we actually did, where I share your thought, is that we decided that there would be no spouses in management because it just makes things easier. So they're great counsel, their advice is taken, but they don't play a role in day-to-day management. So when we take on management role, we want to be considered as professionals more than family members. So we're qualified as well. We specialize in a subject. We believe we hold our own with any other professional, and therefore we're in this job. And we don't have spouses working with us. But I'm looking forward to meeting your granddaughters.
Mr. Dhawal shared about how when you have sort of transitioned into the new role. Was there somebody who impacted you in terms of for taking this decision? How did this process? Because normally people find it extremely difficult to retire. And in your case, it seems like you planned for it. So So where did this thought originate? How did it come?
Well, if you see things around you, you come to three, four things are very clear. One, it's a very fast changing world, and there is a generation gap. The older people, they tend to create a relationship with the existing members of the teams, management, and when the economy has been opened, it has become a route. I mean, people have to take decisions, taking emotions out. So one part was that realization that the business scenario is changing very fast, and you should not hold on to it for too long. Otherwise, the system will throw you out. Yeah. Second was the realization that whatever you do, the energy level at a particular age is not same as a youngster. Number three, if you see all around, it doesn't take much time to understand that nobody can be perfect. And business, the family founder, the business founder would like the business to be perfect, rather himself to be trying to be perfect. So these are the three things. I think it was more inward thinking rather than, and of course, the next point was that in India, you find many family members fighting for the transition, and very ugly things happen, and thereby ruining the business. So, if you take timely action, then a lot of uncertainty in the transition because of your personality, because the family accepts you as a true leader, you are able to, I would say, influence in a positive way rather than in a negative way. And so these are the four things, because if the founder has thought about these things, it looks rational to people. As business grows, and in our case, since we left, since I sort of transitioned the thing from $150 million in 5 years, we've gone to $1 billion. So this means people have the different parts of the world, companies are there, which many people are going after. Different nationalities, we are operating in plants, 4 plants outside and living inside. So you're operating in different cultures. So you have to take these decisions. I believe any successful person, he is successful because he will take decisions. It is not procrastination.
Anybody thought about that most of the companies are listed and the ownership structure is known. But I guess the ownership structure would be known to the outside world in terms of the promoter family. Within the family, is there an informal understanding or some kind of, if it is possible for you to share with us?
It's very simple. It's divided by 4. Period. That's it.
So on paper, it may not be exactly 4, but the
It's
informal.
not there. We don't have any document structuring, but it's very clear that it's divided by 4. Actually divided by 6. That's parents and then 4. So anything. So there's right now, for various reasons, different companies have different shareholdings. But the clarity is very much there amongst us that and all the shareholdings go into the holding company BCR. We also have a common kind of monthly income. So irrespective of what you're earning from your public limited company, you're actually earning only from DCF. So it's, I think what we say is you need to be a capitalist in the business, but a socialist in the way you run your family. So it's very clear.
And going forward, like, do you have equal children, unequal children?
Okay, this was one we debated because, this is a very, very good question. We have unequal children. So there are actually 10 grandchildren with the two oldest sisters having only 2 each and the third and the fourth sister having 3 children each. And we clearly say boys and girls are equal in the shareholding. But since, their inheritance is also a result of what our husbands have, it's very clear that we inherit only based on birth. But it's also clear that voting rights, all those are completely controlled by the holding company. So while you may distribute dividends in this manner, decision making, etc., will be a family decision based on who is running the business and who's contributing to the business. Because if one of the grandchildren or 3 of them decide that they want to build and develop other businesses, while they may share of the revenues, they will have lesser decision making in terms of the direction of the company versus those who are working in the company all the time. So some of these have been articulated and laid down very simplistically, and we do intend to follow them. The reason we're putting them down is that the kids are now 24, 25, and these are values you need to imbibe into them very early. So they were clearly told, unless you have a postgraduate degree, you're not going to work in our companies, unless you, like we work from the very bottom. So unless you go through that grind, don't expect to walk into an office one day and become the boss. So those are, values that...
How have they reacted to this?
They've been told young enough, so I think they're okay. And there are others like, the hospital has what they call Founders Day, which is a big celebration on Dad's birthday. So one of the grandchildren sat there and said, I'm going to start my own company because I want my own Founders Day. I don't want to do my grandfather. So, there are individuals, and I think the talent is in understanding that people are different, aspirations are different, but at the end of the day, we're all a family. One thing we have as a rule is that whenever we're having these difficult discussions, Mom will always say, you can't finish a discussion and fly out, you have to come home for dinner. So, it helps you leave the office at home and continue to be a family. And we've tried to be very open and argue on what we believe is better for the company. And each one of us are individuals, so we have had different opinions. So it's important to keep the family relationship very tight and understand that as professionals we have different points of view. And also understand that, end of the day, it's good for the company to have professionals who have a common bonding. They won't just say, let me do whatever I can to take care of myself and leave the company. You can't leave the company, you're born into the company. So I think that aligns and makes sure that the company interest is protected. People sometimes say the opposite, but I believe well-structured, well-governed families are very good for businesses.
Earlier you talked about a succession period where there were 2 MPs, and you said it was on the basis of merit, it was not power sharing. Could you explain, elaborate on this a little bit more?
We had, right now we have 3 divisions in our business because of restructuring. But otherwise, these 3 divisions were not working as 3 separate divisions. The operations, inside the active matters and R&D, etc., were looked after by one person, and other things were looked after by another person like that. So this was the philosophy of Dr. Ram. It worked well during this, before this license launch at that time. But he did not visualize because he did not have that kind of management business or and he did not want to retire also. So he thought it's better afterwards these two persons will be managing director, and this whole business will continue like this only. And that was the reason he decided to have two managing directors and other family members also added. Now, those two managing directors also, they are not the senior most in the second or third generation. Many uncles, they did not get this appointment. They were still working under the managing director. So that's why I told the managing director also on the merit basis and not on senior.
And also you referred that Dr. Rathi took the decision to involve all his brothers and nephews in the business and a son.
Right.
He had only one son. So how did the son take it then and going forward? Did he resent this, that so many people came?
Because son came quite late, so there was no such problem. And he was, while he joined the business, he was under training and shaping up. And then he became managing director because he was better.
Rahul, you mentioned about succession plan, your retirement and mentoring your two sons. And then you have made a choice of one of them as the CEO or the MD. How difficult or easy was this decision, and how did the other sons take it?
So I've got one son and one machine. Nowadays, because myself and my younger brother, we were the two who together. And he also retired. He was now that has not been a problem. Because first of all, the spread of the business is quite large. And my son decided to he also started a business. So he decided to go outside. So he's looking after a lot of businesses outside and become the vice chairman and a nephew who works in the area. Both of them are working exactly the same way. And myself is a younger brother. My son is younger and my nephew is younger. So my son, in fact, called the nephew, on the his cousin, from the plant. Because he had planned to go outside India. So he called him from plant to the headquarters and kept him along with him for 3-4 years. And then organized the chief, deputy chief, joint managing director. And then he took the call. So now he is the vice chairman of the board and managing director of the manager. Of the my son is vice chairman. And because from UK, he cannot run a day-to-day business. So it is quite smooth.
So in your case, growth has also sort of eased.
Yes, because he is concentrating on a lot of other businesses which he is going. And nephew is looking after the main business is totally different. They were starting from iron ore mine, coal mine, steel industry, and then the tires, roads, and then distribution of the roads all over the world. So there was no point in integrating that. That is what it is. And it's very business. Going forward, there are 4 girls and 1 boy. So,
In your case, like you have 4 sisters and roles, and your father got involved in determining your roles. But in this long years that you have, 4 of you have worked together, there would be occasions when personal aspirations would not have been met. Or the person for whom decision is being taken, and your role.
Actually, I'm sorry. We actually have defined our roles.
Okay.
the concept of having a regional responsibility or a company responsibility and a functional responsibility which cut across the group was thought through, because then we knew that you have one thing that you're responsible for all in all, but you also have a supportive role across the system. So that interplay helped us understand and continue to work together. So I do IT and human resources across the group. Sunita does finance across the group. But I also have individual companies that I am managing director on or I control. So that concept was evolved, but what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do them, where we grew, were all discussed and evolved, not so much that he dreamt it up one day and said, okay, four of you do these things. They evolved as roles. So I think for the youngsters it's important to give them a wide exposure in the beginning, let them understand the dynamics, and then in a defined time frame, you say make your decision. What do you want to do? Do you want to work outside? Do you want to stay in the company? What interests you? Because it's very important to go into the business not just as a family member or as an owner, but as a contributor because of your knowledge and your interest. And that I think is the critical aspect.
That plus the fact that you all co-created these roles.
You co-created.
Now we have questions from the audience. This is for Mr. Rathi and Bharat. A problem for many family businesses is that the elder generation do not have confidence in the younger generation. As they have more experience, they believe they are better for the job. Is this a fair and rational assumption? Oh, this is a fair and rational assumption, but how do they overcome this? What is the role and responsibility of the two generations to ensure smooth transition? Essentially, how does the younger generation develop confidence in the eyes of the elder generation?
First of all, in all these younger people, they are, all of them are graduates of business schools, and they have studied many family businesses in the world.
I think so. This is a question from their point of view.
Yes, that's what I'm coming to that. So they find that this is a problem in the family. And the younger people decided to bring an outside consultant inside the family to teach the elders. So you have to delegate and you have to retire as early as possible. And then it really worked.
Bringing in an external.
Yes, I think bringing in a family business, in all family businesses, my thinking is that whether it is running smoothly or not running smoothly. And when the business family is big, even having Mr. Jabbar is having only two one Navy and one son, or Dr. Mr. Pope, there's a small family, it may not be necessary for that purpose. But in a bigger family, bigger issues, bigger values also, and there an outside consultant, I'm not promoting your business, but outside consultant is very, very necessary, because even elders learn from the new person.
Well, the problem raised by some of our friends here is quite genuine, I think. But a person, if you, it is highly individualistic thing, a person who has been involved in developing a business for a long period of time, I mean, he is supposed to have some, he also then does take it as sort of, he sees to it that the next generation in a rational manner is exposed to all sorts of skill sets requirements, and he goes through, as we call in our steel business, through a hardening process to put him into steel, but as in like tempering. So we go through a process of real grind and not what you call a baby country. We go through a real grind, and that shows up in the sort of stability. But at the end of the day, you can only calculate so much. You have a very highly analytical system then that also leads to paralysis. I think as an entrepreneur, you have to take certain risk in the next generation. Because you know who knows your time is end. So that's not in your hands. So take a little long-term view. And while you are still around, if you nurture them. And as I told you earlier, that either you are a clinger or a pretender or a railway runner. If you are a railway runner, I think so. There are good chances that you.
Again, I think this conversation that you will not be around for all times, maybe a consultant can do.
Yes,
The
exactly.
younger generation.
Right. I want to give you one example here. In Amritsar, there is one family, I forgot the name. They have 16 Maheshwari. Pratap Steel. Now this same founder, he was very active and he didn't want to retire. But all of a sudden one day he had got a very serious heart attack. But that transformed, he said immediately, now I am not going to live longer and I must give all these businesses to this. And then he started one hospital for his retirement. But immediately he retired within 1 or 2 years. But problem is then you don't plan and you don't delegate properly in this new leadership from the younger generation. They don't develop.
I think perhaps what the younger generation could do is, Mr. Jawad, he developed the work post-retirement. So he planned for it. So maybe if the younger generation helps the elder generation plan something,
Definitely.
that could be. This is a question, Sangeeta, for you. It is very nice to know females have taken up the mantle of management. How could they manage coordination of family members, particularly considering their male partners of life are outsiders and in light of the Indian culture? Essentially the question is, how have your spouses sort of adjusted to this role where you are driving the business and they are outside of business?
Well, I think they all have their own individual businesses, that's one thing. Dad often used to introduce us to people, these are my 4 daughters, and their husbands have allowed them to work in my business. And, we always hated it. We continue to hate it. As emancipated women, we want to feel that you have taken the decision to work in this field because you like it, not because your dad told you to and your husband told you, allowed you to. But the fact is that there's a fine balance. There's a very fine balance. I think the fact that it was a healthcare business and that Dad had no sons helped us a lot, because there was kind of a social responsibility angle to our work. There is very clearly the fact that we had no other successors, so we needed to help them, and that helped our husbands reconcile to the fact that yes, they're going to be very active, they are possibly going to be socially, kind of well known. But I think that if you prioritize right, articulate, your value systems and handle this fine balance, plus you also need to find the right husbands. Is this part of the game? It's not easy, but it's important and it can be done. But I think the next generation has it a lot easier. The acceptance is far greater. We already have 2 granddaughters working in the business, and I think they're getting more preferential treatment than the boys. So I think girls in the next generation are really going to have it a lot easier.
This next question is to both of you. Almost all speakers are saying that younger generation should be included into the organization at the front line level.
They should be tempered, they should be hardened, they should pass through fire.
So the question is, till what extent should this level continue before authority can be provided to them? If a lot of time is taken, the candidate may get discouraged and think of moving out.
Well, I think again the perception would be you are either the elders are pretending that transfer of responsibilities taking place, or they are clinkers. If there has to be, of course, if the private universities are going to be in business, their growth has to be much faster. And because generally in the families, they start the atmosphere of business from their childhood. When they sit on the dining table, most of the families, a lot of business discussions take place. When let us say some collaborators come or business partners come, these people are included and sitting, they don't participate, but they hear business things at a much earlier. Take for example, my grandson, he just, even when he was 14, he was asked to go into some of the other companies, summer jobs of financial analysis. By the age of 16, he was checking all the accounts, no, not accounts, but when the announcement of the quarterly results come, he used to sit on the accounts and ask us questions. What is that? So this is at the age of 16. So when you want the people to prepare them for future, you expose them to much larger business angles and not confine them into a very narrow business area. You give them, let's say, rapid, fast track, but rapid
training,
rapid job education. And then in my particular case, I thought that giving them even 3 years, giving them a small company to not have made a big difference to us, even if you advance, give them an opportunity to become the chief executive of that country. Allow him to make mistakes, but then allow him the opportunity of deciding his own chief operating officer and negotiating deals with the foreign collaborators with that business. If he has sunk the business, it's bad. But if he has expanded that small wealth into a big pool, why not?
The delegation will be faster.
The role will be. So it's a question of exposing them to these things. And if you are not giving these exposure, not that even after this exposure everyone will succeed, but you should be able to make an assessment that we are certainly showing signs of the children members are showing signs of promising signs. And they are still to protect the rest.
Example is now Kumar Mohammed Mehdi.
Yeah.
That's a very good example they had young age because he was nurtured, he knew primarily business right from the dining table. So this is one part, and then after, if it's a very good educated member of the family, he learns quickly because then you plan job rotation from one department to another department, and he has to compute so much, and you have to test him, and then he moves from, so he covers all the departments. And then the third thing what you said is, this is what Dr. Das is implementing now. He said, after training, he must become some CEO or of a small business, and he must do no help from outside, family members, only auditing what he is doing, and that creates a very good executive.
Another quick one-liner is an outside exposure also very helpful. Like one of my nieces did a year and a half at IISc in Washington. I think it's a good leveler because they realize how it feels to work, as just, somebody who doesn't have this background, and I think they treat their employees a lot better if they've had that experience of working. So if you can factor it in, it's 1 year outside in somebody else's company.
If you are proved it there also, then also more within the company also the acceptability would be.
I want to add is that in our family there were 3 or 4 members in the third generation. They were not, they were weak in the day-to-day working, and they were not really good leaders or good managers. So they on their own, we have such exit policy. They on their own they exited the business, and they started their own small business. But they are not part of now a big family business.
This is a question to you, Sangeeta, that as the business grows, do you think the ownership and management roles should be separated? Like right now, you are into both roles. You are the owners, you are the managers, you are there in the front leading it. Going forward, as the number of owners also increases, do you still think that
No, I think clearly that this will happen more and more. It's already happening. We currently have a large number of professional managers there. Individual CEOs of each of the hospitals are professionals in their own right. So where we used to be CEOs, we've now given up those roles and we have outside professionals. So undoubtedly it will happen more and more. We also have line functions being headed by outsiders now. Or professionals who are not part of the family. So then they are part of the executive committee involved in decision making for the organization. So that's already happening and is an important aspect of governance.
This is a question for you, Mr. Rathi. You have mentioned restructuring and professionalism happening in your organization. Could you please elaborate on the structures that you have set up and how do they function, what kind of challenges do you face there?
I told you earlier, we had 3-4 businesses in Sudarshan Chemicals in different fields like agrochemicals and pigments and effect pigments. So the operations and R&D was looked after by one person, and like one managing director later on. And so these purchases of all the 3 divisions were combined, and there was no proper system of measuring who is making what kind of profit, which division is making profit, and where to invest, and so on. But after this restructuring, this is the job Dr. Das did first in the first year, is that the three separate division heads and 3 different cost centers. And that worked very well. It's totally restructured. They had different targets, and every division is growing in its own way. Which would not have happened.
So clear accountability.
Clear accountability of businesses and outside also in other companies also, the total accountability was introduced.
This is again a question for you, Mr. Rathi, that when you went for a merit system and the seniors in terms of age were bypassed, what was their reaction? Did they resign? Specifically, how did you handle that?
Because first of all, the family member in every family meeting used to decide who should be the say operation head, who should be marketing head, something like that. Now there were a lot of senior people, and they used to vote. So the person who gets more votes, he got selected. And many of my uncles did not get selected. So this was the policy. They did not mind.
And this policy was introduced by the Dr. Rathi.
Not only Dr. Rathi, he was initiator, but everybody accepted. Like salary also, deciding salary of family members, because finally, based on top family members only, the salaries of other employees in the company was decided, and our company was not that big to have very senior executives at that time. So again, the salary was first of all 3 persons were chosen who will decide the salary of all the people every year, and what kind of increment, including Dr. Rathi's increment.
This was decided by
the all family members, And then three persons were out of the 10 members or 9 members, 3 persons were, no, 3 persons were elected. That they will decide the salary of all the persons.
That was kind of a compensation committee.
Yes, compensation. And then they will decide who will be the MD or who will be this or who will be that.
So the role also, apart from compensation, also the role.
Compensation after. First of all, role is decided, naturally you get more salary.
So on these ticklish issues, whether it is accountability, whether it is role, whether it is compensation, the family elected a small committee of 3 members,
Yes.
and their decision was accepted. Even Dr. Rathi would not challenge it.
No, he cannot tell.
He cannot challenge.
But unfortunately, he was always a member of. but my father was not here. My father retired much earlier because he became a Vipassana teacher and all over the world he traveled. He retired from the business at the age of 64.
Now you mentioned that retirement is a problem because for the owner the job is 24/7, 365 days. Now you have managed this transition. How do you find your time, the satisfaction which you were deriving in business, the time which you were giving it, the results which you were having there, and now that you are having it as a philanthropist?
2 ways. As a head of the family and as chairman of the company, as far as the head of the family is concerned, we are the person and constantly improving they also contribute to the family business advisory board. Where because let's say we have 5, 6 businesses. At the end of the day, it will be true. Someone is looking at it. But it is high time. Because out of let's say 10,000 people, 8,000 people that we employ, there are only 2 active, that is possible. We are myself, whether or not So, a lot of things have been with both advisory board. Long-term things are discussed there. And then, individual person, but as far as, let's say, my own satisfaction, the businessman who creates a business, unless he has passion for that business, he cannot. So when, let us say, this transition was taking place, already myself and my younger brother were getting more and more deeply involved in this social science. And I can tell you, the passion is not diminished. The same passion with which we have created this, let us say, whatever business we are able to do, with the same passion, we are now spending time in the social side. And I would say the satisfaction of doing something selfless, the happiness that doing something, helping people, on a selfless basis, is something which cannot be measured. I would say, the businessman I'm saying, when we go and analyze and say to the villages, there are so many areas where we transformation is taking. And out of our ATM, I was just going through your idea of transformation. One of the things that we have seen, and this is what we are now working through the process of taking, that in any way that we work with, it is based on partnership. It is not our ownership. Ownership has to be there. And what we say is the starting point with these villages, we take them through a course of adventures in nature. Opens them their own inside ideas, what is their potential. And the second thing that we say, that if we get involved with you and your partner, then unless we are able to increase unless you are able to increase 50% of your income, there's no fun in becoming better. You do what you want to do. And with us, if we think that we are realistic, or we are evolving with you, is now the new things which have come to us, the knowledge that we gain in natural resource management, in agriculture, in the areas that we are operating, and there's so much more knowledge is come on agriculture. That's why the number of lives in the area that we have started working. From 10 acres has gone to 250 acres, is to 5,000 acres. And the people are increasing their income from 10 quintals an acre to 30 quintals an acre. So then there is education, that we have very small hospitals, and partnerships, serving institutions around the world. It's a challenge, but it's very exciting.
Every charity, every business family has a big charity trust. I'm sure every family business has. Only problem is that no family member looks after that, at least in my experience. They just give donation every year to give to these funds, etc. But what Mr. Jawar is now doing, I think is an excellent job. And this is what after retirement one can do.
Again, I think this also answers part of the problem which you had in the earlier generation, where people got retired but still they were not willing to leave.
Yes.
And herein if you have created something which is far more challenging and satisfying,
then naturally people who want to retire as early as possible. Otherwise, father retired only because of his spiritual way of thinking.
and also as Mr. Jawar said, this was a business need, and the business has grown in the last 5 years.
Yes.
This is how it happens. So it is.
But also point is that sometimes the younger generation want to do the CSR. One of my nieces clearly said, I don't want to run the business, but I want to play a role in the CSR. So give me that platform. So I think it's also to be considered a very valuable thing that that the family is creating, and the children should feel that responsibility for it. So it's not just a retirement plan. It's a very satisfying thing to do.
And the key difference is CSR and charity. If it is charity, then the impact, I think Mr. Jawar was mentioning about the parasite problem. But we don't want to create parasites where we will be just supporting, but we want the partnership, the P4 model. I think we are almost through, so let me summarize. First of all, I would like to thank the 3 panelists for excellent responses, and to the audience for giving us wonderful questions. Unfortunately, we have not been able to cover all of them. To summarize, what was discussed in this session was, one, Sangeeta spoke about the ownership structure, whereas although in the Apollo Group, at a formal, in a legal level, whatever is the structure, the informal understanding is that it is equal among the 4 siblings. The roles have been co-created, and the spouses have been supportive, and they have to do a difficult job of maintaining this balance. In case of Mr. Jawar, I think it is personally for me also a lot of learning as to how one can elegantly plan retirement and actually implement it, and implement it in such a manner that the business is also growing. You have the satisfaction of the business growing, and you have the personal satisfaction of impacting so many more people. Similarly, in case of Mr. Rathi's family, they have involved an external and worked on the structure for bringing in more accountability in the system, and creating more like a compensation committee or the role definition committee. So these are processes through which they are trying to bring in more objectivity and accountability in the business. I have left with you with a question, and I hope the answer to that with all of you, or majority of you, would be in the affirmative. Thank you for being such a good audience. Thank you so much.
Chair, for such a wonderful and valuable session on family governance. I'm sure it was of great help to our audience. I now request Mr. Anil Senani to present mementos to the speakers. Ms. Sangeeta Reddy. Mr. B.K. Howard. Mr. K.M. Rathi. I now request Ms. Reddy to present a memento to the chair, Mr. Anil Senani. We will now take a 25-minute coffee break. Coffee is served on both sides of the auditorium. Please come back at 5:30 sharp. We'll begin the session on time. Thank you.